Greetings, foolish earthlings. You are listening to Dads from the Crypt. Go to the Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors. This is Kang the Alien, and resistance is futile. Ha! Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Ha ha! Ha 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 ha!
Hello, welcome to episode 1 of Dads from the Crypt Go to the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. My name is Jason. I'm joined by Zoran.
Hello!
How are you tonight?
Oh my goodness, I'm wonderful. I get to talk about the Simpsons. Horror
Always
Simpsons.
a good time.
The best.
Yes. And also you're of the Low Carb Comedy and Dead Meat YouTube channels.
That is me. One is updated more regular than the others because Deadbeat pays me and I can't pay myself.
If only.
Yeah, but hopefully I've got some stuff brewing in my mind for filming this summer.
That's awesome.
If it all works out.
All right. So just to level set a little bit, this is a new series we're doing for the Dads from the Crypt Patreon account. The episode you're listening to right now is free on our main feed. You can access all future episodes if you are a member of the $3 or $5 tiers on our Patreon. We'll be releasing an episode every other week, and episode 2, which will also feature Zoran, is up right now. So if you enjoy this episode, please consider subscribing.
Do it! I'm the free episode? Oh, good. Oh, good.
You're the taste. The first taste is always free.
Well, I better do a good job then. Oh, great. No pressure.
No pressure. I pulled up some nuggets of information about Treehouse of Horror series, things I Googled literally a minute before we got on. This is
really prepared. Totally.
We run a tight production ship here at Dads from the Crypt headquarters. Okay, so this is mostly pulled from DVD commentaries and some interviews. According to DVD commentary, the reason why the episodes are non-canon is a trade-off for the writers. Writing 7-minute segments was just too taxing for the writers, so it was proposed that they could do anything without worrying about continuity to appease them. And you think for a show like The Simpsons that gets really kind of wacky and goes lots of different places, I'm sure they come up with a million ideas that they're like, we just can't do that in the continuing show, but let's put that in the parking lot for when we want to pull out some of these episodes.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that they have 22 minutes and they're doing 7-minute episodes. They're telling full stories, like basically summing up entire movies sometimes in 7 minutes, which is very impressive. And yeah, I read that these are some of the most difficult ones to write, but still the most fun that they, I think Mike Reese or Al Jean wanted to get rid of them and said, and the writer's like, no, we like it. It lets us do whatever the hell we want.
Right. So again, according to this, the episodes were originally written at the beginning of the production run. In the later seasons, they were written at the end and aired at the beginning of the next season as holdovers. So the animators have more time to work. Because these episodes, like you said, these episodes are very difficult because a lot of them involve new and complex backgrounds and new characters and new designs.
And yeah,
so
that's the thing that
recycled a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, when you think about animation, you always want to have reusable elements. There's always a lot up front, and you want to keep. That's why it's always the Simpsons house. You keep using that Simpsons house. You built it, you designed it, great. We can use that again, saves money for the future. But this is like all new, and some of these shots they do in these are amazing. They're like very cinematic and angles and all kinds of stuff.
All right, and then staff writer Al Jean, as you mentioned earlier, commented that the idea of it to parody EC Comics, which again ties into Tales from the Crypt, was a really original and kind of shocking for a cartoon on network television. Executive producer Jim Brooks said, "We better have a disclaimer at the beginning of this Halloween show." So Marge comes out and warns people that they were about to see something scary. And the funny thing is that it's very tame by our Halloween standards and by network animation standards. According to M. Keith Brook, author of Drawn to Television, the warning only made the episode more attractive to children. Because of course.
Yeah, always tell them not to do it. That's what my mom told me. Never watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And what did I want to do? I searched that damn movie out. And I love that movie because my mom didn't want me to see it.
So never tell your kids not to do anything because they're just going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
That's our parenting advice for tonight.
Good parenting advice. I don't have the kids, but I use the same thing with my Pomeranian.
So let's roll into it. So the first episode actually happens, I think, episode 3 of season 2. So they didn't have one the first season. Obviously, they're probably figuring things out. And, this is a very complex thing to do. The first episode came out on October 25th, 1990. Zoran, why don't you give us a little plot synopsis?
It's basically they're telling spooky stories in the good old treehouse. Got to use that treehouse element that the animators already designed. So they're doing the spooky stories, which always you have the flashlight under your chin thing. Did you ever actually do that in real life?
I think like at camp, when we went to camp and you're telling stories in the cabin, we would do that. Or like for talent shows, we would recreate the Bohemian Rhapsody video.
Oh,
we
there
all
you
have
go.
Flashlights.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So they're doing that, and then it's going from there. They tell 3 twisted tales. But also this episode is it's called the Halloween special. It's not called Treehouse of Horror. They're not called that till I think like the 13th one, and they had the panning through the gravestones, which is all kinds of gags. And the first one is pretty tame. It's like a couple Simpsons relatives, and then Garfield, Casper, the Grateful Dead, Your Name Here, Elvis, Disco, and Paul McCartney. Yeah. Paul McCartney was an interesting one that I was like, oh, was this them trying to predict again? As we all know, the Simpsons like to predict the future over time.
Well, I think this is the whole Paul is dead.
Yeah. That's fair.
Thing. But I really like the disco one. That always tickles me.
Mm-hmm. That was one of my favorite things from the Evil Dead video game. One of Ash's lines in Hail to the King was, "Say hi to Disco for me." I was like, that's a good Ash line. That's a good Ash line. So yeah, they're telling stories, and the first story that they tell is called Bad Dream House. And I wish I had the voice of James Earl Jones.
Don't we all?
Does a lot of narration and things in this episode. It's really actually very interesting to hear James Earl Jones have parts in all of these little segments.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how that came about, because he was a big deal even then.
Yeah, and he plays just like a delivery guy in the first one.
I didn't even recognize that at first. I rewound it when I realized that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first episode is basically a parody of Poltergeist and Amityville Horror, where the Simpsons get a good deal on a new house, and Homer's loves saving money, and they move into a new house that is definitely very haunted by the voice of Harry Shearer. Ooh, scary. Shearer. Scary Shearer. That works. They probably used that in one of the titles, which this episode didn't have the weird names for all the credits, like where they make them scary, spooky names. Didn't do that in the first one. Bad Dream House. They move into the house and they're unpacking their stuff, and books are floating out that Bart unpacks. They float right back into the box. They go to the kitchen. Kitchen's covered in blood. And Marge is like, oh, well, this place could use a woman's touch. And then there's a vortex in the wall, which I always love this vortex effect. It's a very cool looking effect.
Mm-hmm. That's from like Poltergeist, right? There's like the carrying.
Oh, I guess, yeah, because they like the rope that they send through the thing there. But yeah, they toss an orange in, it like zips away. Okay, and then the next story is called Hungry Are the Damned, which is basically a straight up parody of To Serve Man. And that was Twilight Zone, or was that Outer Limits?
I think it's Twilight Zone.
Okay. Yeah, To Serve Man. The Simpsons are kidnapped by the first appearance of Kang and Kodos, the aliens that will forever be in every Treehouse of Horror episode. And their relationship changes all the time, too. At one point, fluid. They were sisters.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's my sister. And then at one point, they were lovers. At one point, I'm just like, I don't really know what's going on there, but hey, it's all good. It's all gravy. Hungry Are the Damned. So yeah, the Simpsons are kidnapped by aliens. They're treated to a lot of delicious food, their favorite foods, and there's a bit of a twist to see whether they're being fattened up or not.
All right.
And then finally we end with classic The Raven. An adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, as read by James Earl Jones in his amazing voice, where Homer is the main character and Bart is a bird.
A raven.
Specifically, a raven. There you go.
Sorry, beat you the line on that one.
All good. All good.
All right. So, yeah, okay, let's discuss these. We all love Poltergeist. We all love Amityville Horror. So seeing this kind of mashup parody against is really setting the stage of what Treehouse of Horror it kind of does, is where it takes on different properties and kind of simplifies it. And I love like Homer gaslighting Marge, which is so like the typical thing that always happens in ghost stories, where obviously often the woman is like experiences the brunt of it and the husband just won't listen to her.
Yep.
He's just taking it to like such an extreme.
Also, he could save some money on a house, which I understand. Wanting to buy a house, yes. I would just go, yeah, sure. Hot Indian burial ground in the basement. Great.
Yeah, but then he calls his real estate agent and says, "You didn't mention this." He's like, "Oh, yeah, he actually did 5 times."
Yeah. It's real estate agent. He's like, "Now, sir, we made sure to we didn't move the headstones or the bodies. They're in the basement there." Mm-hmm. And Harry Shearer is great as the voice of the house and making the walls bleed. And there's such great, like I was saying earlier, the cinematography that they use in these, they're very cinematic for what they are. They like do high angle shots and low angle, and there's like walls moving. The colors are shifting. There's like axis, axi, AXIS.
Yeah, it's giving it like that vertigo, like
that vertigo. Feel. Yeah, that feel right there. Yeah, it's very interesting. Some of the angles don't work out great. Their perspective is weird, but I'm like, this is all hand-drawn animation still, which is incredible and just always good to see. Love me some hand-drawn actual cell animation.
And then there's like the gag of like Bart trying to get the house to drip more blood.
Yeah, like do it. Leave me alone.
Right, and then which brings us to like the closing gag of like the house is like, fuck it, I'm just gonna destroy myself. I'm gonna commit house suicide rather than put up with these people.
But that's after Marge flips out. And I love seeing Marge flip out and take charge and just like, that's enough. Shut up. You're going to live with us. You're going to like it. You got no choice. All right, let's deal with this. Like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah. That's what I've always wanted someone to do in a haunted house movie. I'm not a huge fan of haunted house movies because it all is very similar plotting of, oh, a little something happens. Oh, maybe we should leave. No, there's a plausible reason why we won't leave. Okay, let's go again. Let's do the microfiche fucking montage and look at how the person died and then answer the ghost question. Blah, blah, blah. There are some good haunted movies, but for the most part, not a huge haunted house fan.
They're very formulaic.
Yeah, Poltergeist is probably my favorite.
Poltergeist. I saw The Changeling for the first time last year, and I really liked it. I mean, the drags in some parts, but definitely I think it sets up a lot of that formula or advances it.
Yeah.
And it is generally creepy.
Yeah. There's some good stuff there, but I start to see the tropes a little too much. And I love The Simpsons playing with all of those tropes.
Yes.
So good work. Good segment.
All right. Hungry Are the Damned. These characters must have been like something they wanted to introduce in the main show, but they just thought was too weird because they're so well formed. And so like the voices are so well done and they have a whole shtick and they're like in pretty much the whole episode. So this is where I'm thinking like, they're like, can we have aliens in the Simpsons? And they're like, let's not go too far. This is like Rick and Morty, I think is like the Treehouse of Horror, like every episode.
I love Kang and Kodos. The voice is great. But then you also get the third one, which is I think Sarek the Preparer.
Sarek the Preparer. Also James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones.
Then we have a fourth one who you have to cut out your tongue to be able to pronounce.
No, that one's James Earl Jones. He's the one that you'd have to cut out the tongue to prepare. I thought they were the same.
No, there's 4.
There's 4. All right, never mind. Sarek the Preparer is not James Earl Jones. That's the one who's at the end. I slaved for days. And you made Sarek the Preparer cry. So I don't know if we get a name for James Earl Jones, but yep, James Earl Jones is an alien again. So it's nice to see multiple ones because I think from this point forward, we really only see Kang and Kodos.
Yeah, we never see those other two again.
And I think they jumped into regular Simpsons continuity.
Oh, really?
These are all out. I remember I'm pretty sure they're in the Alien episode with Homer identifying in a lineup, like, what was the alien you saw? And then like Alf's there goes, hey.
Yeah. Yo. Well, okay. Well, there's like the non sequiturs.
There's non sequiturs, but I'm sure and again, I haven't watched a lot of the later Simpsons. I played Simpsons Chicken for a while during the pandemic and would watch an episode and be like, if I got a laugh, I would continue on to the next one. And then eventually became, if I laughed once during the season, I would go to the next season.
Gotcha.
And then it stopped probably around whenever they went to HD. That was the first season that I didn't get a laugh out of for me.
Yeah, that's like
20
early aughts, mid aughts.
But they keep going. Kudos to them.
I think they went HD right after the movie. I feel like it was
the movie was great.
Yeah,
it was great, but maybe that's why that season suffered.
Hunger the Dam is just so goddamn funny because they're just toying. I've seen this episode dozens of times. So I always forget they like the punch at the end. Where they're like, are they going to cook us? Are they trying to be nice?
It was a great play on the "To Serve Man" was the name of the original book, right? And then there's like, it's a cookbook. It's a cookbook. But this one was it for how to cook humans?
How to cook. Then they brush off the space dust as how to cook for humans. And they blow off more. It's how to cook 40 humans. And then it's how to cook for 40 humans.
Which is I would buy that cookbook in the store, like specifically 40 humans. These servings are for 40 humans only. No more, no less. That's it. If you're doubling the recipe, that's 80 humans that you're cooking for, but don't mess it up.
What they need is to do that same kind of cover, but have it be, I don't know, like if you shine a light on it, or like there's like stickers to peel off.
Oh, that you could, yeah. Titles. I need the space dust. And anytime you just put space in front of a word, it's just fantastic. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it turns out that they weren't trying to eat the Simpsons the whole time, and the Simpsons got punished for it.
Right, because it turns out they just like to eat. They just won't stop eating. So they think they're being fattened up, but they're like, no, you just keep eating our food.
Too bad they won't get to play Pong anymore. Yeah. Aliens and their super advanced video game tennis system.
Oh my god. And it's great. It just plays on the fact that we inherently like the Simpsons, but they're also kind of terrible people. It's kind of like Seinfeld in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that was one of the nice things about seeing that family, the Simpsons, and also made them so controversial is because you had an underachiever kid, and you had fathers strangling their children, and normally it was not the Leave It to Beaver style families you would have kind of seen before.
Right. And even in this episode, Lisa is the one that screws up everything because she's like overly curious and trying to figure things out. Where if the gag is that if they would have stayed on the spaceship, they would have experienced, was it emotions greater than joy?
Yeah, than anything you call fun. The greatest things that you would have been worshipped.
Right. So it's because Lisa couldn't stop, questioning everything that they didn't get to go to their homeworld.
And I don't know if I fully believe them. I think they still probably would have eaten the Simpsons. Like that whole bit where they're just like, oh, you'll be at the feast. You'll be the guests of honor. Plenty of time to chew the fat. Why are you laughing at that if it is not meaning that you are going to eat them?
Because they're aliens, man. They got their own little, their own jibe.
That's true. They got their own sense of humor.
Yeah. They like to laugh after every word. All right. But yeah, this is a fantastic episode. And again, sets up a classic gag in all these. You just like wait whenever you watch Treehouse of Horror, you're just waiting for those guys to pop up.
Oh yeah. And so yeah, they become the running gag from that episode onward. And then we go to the third segment, the Raven.
And this is just pure, like you could show this to a classroom of kids. Like I'm pretty sure they did.
I don't understand what they thought was so scary in these episodes. Like watching this again, like they have that warning in the beginning, like you were saying, that was sincere. They did it initially as a sincere warning, parroting, was it Edward Van Sloan from Frankenstein?
I don't remember the actor, but yeah, it's from Frankenstein.
Yeah, 1931 Frankenstein. They had the same curtain, like, be careful, it's very scary.
Yeah, I think the second and third one aren't. The first one, I can see it because there's like the blood coming on the walls and they're stalking each other with knives.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
Homer
probably
goes a little shining, little Jack Torrance.
Right. So my guess is that's the part that they didn't like. But yeah, again, by today's standards, it's like,
yeah,
nothing.
Raven isn't scary. Raven is just a very fun adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe. But probably my least favorite of the three stories.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll put this on like every Halloween, just from like YouTube or something.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying of the three, there weren't enough jokes for me that I was like, I remember the other ones more and I really like them. And this one, is a great adaptation of The Raven. And because of this, like most things, watching The Simpsons growing up, I learned so much from them. I didn't know anything about Edgar Allan Poe or The Raven and Nevermore and Lost Lenore, and all of these things are now in my head because of The Simpsons, not because of the original material.
Right. The Weird Al effect.
Yeah. Thank you, Simpsons, for being one of the best college courses I could ever take.
Right.
Old timey stuff.
And then we got James Earl Jones as the narrator. Just killing
chef's
it.
Kiss. Just
well,
also,
kiss. Which actor does Homer?
Dan Castellaneta.
Yeah, he's just killing it in this too. Like he's just rattling off this dialogue.
The whole thing, I can't remember who said this. It was about like Mickey Mouse and like being a voice actor. If you could do the voice, that's one thing, but can you do the voice doing Shakespeare? Yeah. And he is Homer Simpson, and he is delivering all of this amazingly. It's like listening to Homer Simpson do Shakespeare. It's so good.
He's like firing it off too. Like he's got like the rhythm, and it's just rapid fire dialogue.
And Lenore, oh god, the frame, the extra frame for her little bit of hair at the top. That's such a good joke. That's such a good visual freaking joke.
Yeah, and again, like you can buy a toy of Bart as the Raven. Like it's crazy.
Well, I think at this point, after 34 years, 35 years, you can buy a toy of anything that's ever happened on this ever.
Right. Like here's the toilet they use in that one episode.
Oh, thank God.
They got toilet paper. Yeah, to me, this is just pure icon. And they were actually afraid that was going to be like too high art for their audience.
It is a very kind of artsy thing, but they do a very good job of the MST3K like style commentary that Bart's giving, like during it, like, and I opened the door, there was nothing there. And he's like, it'd be better than nothing? Anything!
That's what people saying about Skinamarink.
Yeah. I have not seen it yet, but that is what I'm hearing. It's like anything. I hear that movie is very much let your imagination do the lifting. You got a good imagination and you can freak yourself out. Great. Enjoy it, because the movie doesn't do a ton for that.
I had the opposite, because I was wearing headphones because the kids were asleep. And the crackling and just the nothingness I fell asleep on the couch.
So this is the horror movie's version of listening to a rainstorm or white noise to go to bed. I just put a little Skinamarink and just pass right the fuck out.
Yeah,
just that crackling. Little toy noises, whatever's there, just clocked out. But yeah, and this is also remind me that this was at least partially the foot clomping years of The Simpsons. I always remember the early Simpsons that you could hear like footsteps, and they're all very like clump, 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 clump. Like when they would walk places, they were leaving like the treehouse, and I just heard the clomping. And it's a very like Hanna-Barbera, like old cartoon noise that you have for these feet moving around that you hear every like footstep. And I think you hear that mostly in like season 1. And I'm like, oh, it's the foot clomping years of The Simpsons.
So where does it go after that?
It just, you stop hearing footsteps constantly. Like it's not these loud, like clompy, like hoof steps all the time. Okay. I mean, go back and watch the first season and just listen for the footsteps. And I'm just like, okay, yeah. And for me, I started, I think, falling in love with The Simpsons more once that was gone. And I think that's probably like season 3 onward. And that's the golden era for my Simpsons.
Right. Wow. Okay. Now every time I listen to Simpsons, that's all I'm going to be able to hear.
And that's what I do to fall asleep. I listen to the foot clomping. I just put on the clomping. I turn off the audio. Just clump, 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 clump.
You play the opening for Monty Python, The Holy Grail with the coconuts.
The ones carried by swallows. But yeah, this was that's where it ended. And then it ends with the harpsichord theme, which also I think this was the first episode to play a like the original theme song for The Simpsons. They had the kind of creepy theremin-esque, but they couldn't actually get a theremin for it. And then a harpsichord version at the end, which I very much remember from Songs in the Key of Springfield was the CD that they had of all the music that I played endlessly in my car to the point that people are like, I don't want Zoran to drive us anywhere because we're going to have to listen to the fucking Simpsons CD. And I'm like, yes, we are going to listen to the Stonecutters over and over again.
Tell us more, Dr. Zaius.
Can I play the piano anymore? Of course you can. Well, I couldn't before. God damn, this show is so good.
Oh,
but,
all right, let's round this out. What is your MVP? What's your segment MVP?
Very tough. Very tough between Bad Dream House and Hungry Are the Damned. I'm probably gonna go with Hungry Are the Damned, just because it introduces Kang and Kodos. I gotta give it to Kang and Kodos. Like, they're the ones that started this whole thing, and I love the complete misdirect of 40 humans, and all of that is just brilliant.
Yeah. These are all 3 fantastic episodes.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna say?
I know that I'm gonna ding Bad Dream House only because they kind of go back to this whole parody thing, and it gets better later. So I know like the Shinning one is coming up, and that's just the better not better version, but I don't know. I know that there's
precursor to the Shinning. You got Homer with the axe there running around.
Hunger the Damned is fantastic. It's iconic, but I'm going with the Raven. It's just
wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It's again. I'll put that on any time of year. It just hits me right in the feels.
It is, because it's James Earl Jones is doing it just earnestly, seriously, just putting that gravitas behind it, and then you just got the little Bart coming in and being his wise ass little comments and everything.
And it's just they just commit to the bit. They could have really they could have kind of stepped around it, or like done something a little tamer, or just made it kind of like the Raven, but they're like, no, we're gonna read the Raven. We're gonna have firing off this Homer Shakespeare-esque dialogue. It was ballsy. I give them all the credit for that.
We do have the wraparound this episode that keeps that in continuity. So the wraparound's still in continuity. And then these stories just aren't a nice way of doing that. And then they just give up on that. I think after like episode 5 or so, maybe they stopped the wraparounds because they were running out of time. Like they had to just focus on getting the episode, the little shorts, the anthology shorts.
Right. And yeah, we'll talk more about continuity in the next one, because they do some weird stuff with that too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Zoran, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you?
At my house. I never leave my house. I'm not giving you my address, but that's mainly where people can find me.
I've never been inside your kitchen.
I mean, it's got a gingerbread man with a knife through him on the wall from Krampus. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And no, I love my house. It's great. And you can actually find me on the internets. Low Carb Comedy is my handle on pretty much everything. lowcarbcomedy.com, LOWCARBCOMEDY. And I'm more active on Twitter now than I have been in the past. So if you actually have questions for me or want to chat with me or just have things to share with me, tag me on the Twitters. And usually I will respond with some kind of amusing quip or just a little heart. Like what you said.
Or if you're like me, you can stalk them on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, sure, because I'm very active on LinkedIn, all of America.
That's how I got in contact with you for the first time.
Wow, that's probably why it took so long to get in contact with me, because I'm like, LinkedIn, what the hell? I still have this profile? I don't even know my login anymore for LinkedIn. It was just, I put that I work at Dead Meat, and then I still work at Dead Meat, so that's about as much as I needed there.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode. As we mentioned earlier, episode 2 is already live on our Patreon feed, and episode 3 will be out in 2 weeks. We appreciate everyone for listening. And with that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt Go to the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror.
Goodbye, everybody.
Worst podcast ever.